Hello, everybody, and welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. Project HR is brought to you by IRI Consultants. IRI helps organizations navigate workplace challenges, improve employee engagement and productivity, manage labor relations, and implement effective communication strategies to achieve their goals. For more information, you can visit IRI at iriconsultants.com. I am Jennifer Oraquah, Director of Business Development for IRI, and your host for today's episode of Project HR. In this episode of Project HR, we'll be focusing on career development, which for most of us has been defined almost exclusively in promotions, moves, job title changes. But should climbing the corporate ladder be the only way for employees to grow? My guest today, Julie Winkle Giulioni, doesn't think so. She's the Principal and Instructional Designer with DesignArounds. She's the co-author of the international bestseller, Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go. And today we're going to be talking about her latest book, Promotions Are So Yesterday, Redefine Career Development, Help Employees Thrive. Thanks so much for joining me here today on Project HR, Julie.
Thank you, Jennifer.
So, Julie, you've long been a champion for workplace growth and development. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to write the book?
You bet. I come out of an education and development background that took me from university professor and department chair back into industry. And so learning, development, it's been the red thread through everything that I do. And about 10 years ago, I had the good fortune to co-author Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go with Beverly Kay. And that book literally took me around the world working with leaders and employees in this field of career development. And during that time, I was able to see up close and personally the ongoing challenges that organizations, leaders, employees all face relative to this really important workplace dimension, and gave me the inspiration for being able to offer a different way of approaching something that's kind of been stayed and gotten a little bit stale over the years.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about this traditional view of career development and why the climbing the ladder concept is kind of problematic today.
It's problematic because we've changed, the workplace has changed, work has changed, and yet our expectations around career development, they haven't quite kept up. I mean, when you look at the workplace, organizations are flatter, they're less hierarchical, work is getting done more organically. We look at our internal landscape. What we're looking for from work is different today for many of us than it was even 3 years ago.
Mm.
And yet, despite all of that change, when we start thinking about our careers, we just reflexively start measuring success against that outdated, outmoded measuring stick of the promotion. And so there's this constant dissonance that we feel as both managers and employees in an organization.
So, do you think it's important to employees career development, however it's defined? Do you think employees think about career development?
You bet. All the time. For a long time, we've known career development is one of the top reasons people come to a job, stay at a job, leave a job. And the last couple of years, we've only seen kind of a finer point being put on that. I think the research from Cengage indicates that 83% of the people who leave a job report that one of the top reasons was they weren't growing in their roles any longer.
So, let's talk about that. What is the role of career development with employee retention, which is top of mind for most of us right now?
Yeah, it's one of the top drivers that's either keeping people or causing them to look elsewhere. LinkedIn found that 94% of employees would stay at an organization longer if they believed that organization was going to make an investment in their development.
Mm.
So, development is really one of the key levers that managers and leaders and organizations, for that matter, today have when it comes to titrating the tide of attrition.
So, in your book, Promotions Are So Yesterday, you cite a statistic about employee perceptions of who's responsible for their career development. Let's talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, before the pandemic, I had done some research, and the focus of the research was actually kind of cross generational. But one of the real high points that came out was that across the generations, we found 70% of employees believe that career development is a fundamental job responsibility of managers.
Mm.
Employees are looking to their managers to help them to grow, to develop, to learn on the job. And too frequently, managers either don't recognize that as an expectation of their employees or don't have the skill set to be able to deliver on it.
So, do you share that belief that leaders have a degree of responsibility for their team's career development?
The way I would frame it, I think, Jennifer, is it's a partnership. And both the employee and the manager or leader will have a role in that. The employee has to own development. No one's going to care about your career as much as you do. And
Mm-hmm.
so the employee needs to set the direction, set the pace, be the navigator there. But they can't do it alone. And so that's where the manager or the leader comes in. But for years, I think a lot of managers, leaders, they felt this heaviness, this burden associated with career development, like it's their job to put the employee on their back and carry them across the career finish line. And that's not the case at all. The manager's job is really to support, to guide, to facilitate, to enable. And when you bring that kind of empowerment and ownership with that sort of enablement, you've got this unbeatable combination for growth.
I love that. All right, Julie, I've got to take a quick sponsorship break right now, but when we return, I want to talk about career development beyond, between, and besides promotion. So stay with us.
Creating and maintaining a solid digital employee communication strategy can seem overwhelming. But missing out on the advantages of today's tools can mean missing the mark in developing and maintaining positive employee relations. We've identified 7 digital communication mistakes our clients make most often to give you a huge leap forward in your digital communication strategy. From clearly defining the intent of your communication to ensuring consistency, these practical tips are easy to implement. By avoiding mistakes like solving the wrong problem at the wrong time or not taking advantage of a variety of delivery mechanisms, you'll create a solid digital communication strategy that engages employees. Don't waste another minute on an ineffective strategy. Download your free copy of the 7 digital employee communication mistakes today at projectionsinc.com/employee-digital-communication.
I'm back with Julie Winkle Giulioni, author of Promotions Are So Yesterday, Redefine Career Development, Help Employees Thrive. All right, so Julie, I want to talk about the concept of the multidimensional career. What's involved with that concept?
Well, traditionally, we've looked at careers and career development in just one and two dimensional ways, moving up the corporate ladder or around the org chart. And when we think about career development that way, when we conflate development with those promotions, we really limit what's possible. And so, in my work with clients over the last decade, what I have been able to glean is there are several other dimensions, avenues, vehicles, ways that people can grow and ways that they really want to grow. And if we can kind of take off the blinders and expand our definition of career development to encompass more of these dimensions, we can deliver more of the development that people are really looking for.
So, to build this multidimensional career concept, you've developed a framework of 7 different dimensions of development, basically 7 different ways to grow. Is that fair to say? What was the process of developing that framework?
Working with clients, both employees and managers, really talking with people about what their careers mean and how they want to grow. Over these 10 years of field research, the patterns became clear and it became really obvious that there were certain commonalities as people talked about the vehicles and the ways they could and wanted to develop. And so after looking at it from the variety of different perspectives, I was able to really kind of lift up these 7 alternative dimensions that balance out that more one-dimensional tradition that we have around career development.
So, let's run through those different dimensions.
They include contribution, competence, connection, confidence, challenge, contentment, choice. And then the 8th one is still that climb up the corporate ladder.
So, not everyone is going to have competency or even interest in all 7 areas. So, how can we as leaders know which way our employees should go?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this framework, to be honest with you, Jennifer. Not everyone is going to have the same interests. One size doesn't fit all. And so a
Mm.
framework like this really gives managers the opportunity to think through and offer the kind of bespoke development that folks are looking for. So, what's involved is helping to expand the menu, if you will, of the ways that people can grow, educate employees about these other dimensions, and then work together to really understand at any given point what's most interesting. What's interesting to me today might be challenge, and in 6 months I'm going to be ready for greater contentment or
Mm.
confidence or something like that. So having an ongoing thread of dialogue to remain current in terms of our understanding of where employees are coming from gives us a basis to be able to then collaborate and co-create the kinds of experiences that will deliver on those developmental interests.
So, the process itself begins with an assessment. Let's talk about that assessment a little bit and what's involved.
Yes. So in the book, there's a paper based assessment that managers can use with employees to help isolate where the interests lie. But we've also developed an online, a digital self assessment where employees can go, they spend about 10, 15 minutes, and they're given sets of statements that they have to read through and identify which are most and least interesting to them. And it's been just fascinating to get feedback on the self assessment because just the act of assessing, just the act of thinking about my career differently and what's interesting to me and what's less interesting to me, what we've heard is that that in and of itself is hugely instructive. But the self assessment ends with a confidential emailed report
Mm.
that summarizes for the individual where their interests lie, which dimensions they're most interested in, down to those that are less interesting, gives some analysis on those dimensions. Does a deeper dive on the interest of greatest or the dimension of greatest interest. But what I love most about the self assessment is it includes a reflection question set that allows the employees, after looking at this information, to really kind of dig in and noodle these ideas a bit and to prepare for a really rich conversation with their manager. So the manager doesn't have to guess, there's no
Mhm.
crystal balling. They've got the data there and they can start this conversation at a point far farther down the line than,
Mm.
months and months of discovery coaching.
Yeah, have you taken the assessment yourself?
I have, yes. I had to eat my own dog food here as testing, and I have to say, for myself, it validated what I probably already had in the back of my head as a top priority.
Interesting. So, would you always suggest that leaders take the assessment themselves first?
I think it's helpful for a leader to have that experience, to know what their folks are going to be going through, to be able to share it. I think that leading by example is always a powerful strategy for a leader or a manager. So I would definitely recommend it, and it's free, and it's 10 or 15 minutes of time for some
Mm.
really good insights.
All right, Julie, it's time for another quick break. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Oraqua, and my guest today is Julie Winkle Giulioni, author of Promotions Are So Yesterday, Redefine Career Development, Help Employees Thrive. We're back. And Julie, the thing I love about this is that with your framework, leaders can help employees develop regardless of the availability of promotional opportunities. That's so empowering for both the leader and the employee.
Yeah, that really is the centerpiece of the work. There's a mathematical impossibility that we set up when we conflate career development with promotions. And if we can expand the definition and give people more ways to grow, we're going to be able to capture the hearts and the minds and keep our people longer.
Yeah, so I want to run through an example. Let's say you give the assessment to an employee and it comes up that they rank high in contribution and challenge. How do you create a career development plan for them versus how that plan might work for someone ranking in connection and choice?
Well, I guess the first thing is the key is that we don't want to create a development plan for anyone. We want to create a development plan with someone. So it really becomes a partnership, kind of harkening back to what we were just talking about, that partnership, that ownership that the employee needs to have. So it all happens through conversation. So if the employee has taken the assessment, feels comfortable, the manager has earned the right to have visibility to that information, and we learn that it's contribution and challenge, for instance, that becomes an opportunity for a really rich conversation about what does contribution mean to you? What does it look like? How do you want to step up differently? And the beauty of contribution and challenge is that frequently stepping up, taking on more, doing more, living on purpose really aligns nicely with taking on a new challenge, stepping out of the comfort zone into that discomfort zone where learning is amplified. So it gives us a great opportunity to begin brainstorming. All right, what's going on in the department or in our division? Where are there opportunities for you to step up, step in, step out, take on more, and enjoy the kind of development that you are looking for? And what goals do you have for that? And then we can get down into the nitty gritty of the plan of who's going to do what and by when, and the specific learning outcomes that we want, because we're contributing all the time. What we're talking about is how can we use the contribution? How can we use the challenge really intentionally to ensure that the employee is growing, that they're taking something back from that experience in terms of skills and abilities and a network that enriches their experience.
And I got to be honest, your book is one of my favorite kinds. It provides a ton of tools and actionable templates. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Thank you. That is the biggest compliment you could possibly share, because that is exactly the mission that I was out for. Managers and leaders are time starved. We've never been more stretched. And what we need are tools easy to implement, doable actions. And so the way the book is structured, there's a little bit of upfront kind of stage setting, but the lion's share of the book is a set of chapters, each dedicated to one of these dimensions that gets into how do you do it. There are, as you said, there are templates, there are questions, there are worksheets. So it's very roll up your sleeves and open it up. I kind of envision that a manager just needs to stay one chapter ahead. You just know, where that employee is coming from. And then you're ready to sit down and even open the book right there with the employee and let's thumb through and see, how can we put this into practice?
And I mentioned Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go, which was your first book, which also dealt with the topic of career development. It certainly seems like the two books could be used in conjunction with one another. Would you suggest that?
I really agree. I kind of envision Promotions Are So Yesterday almost as a sequel. I'm scared to say that because we know how movies do in the whole world. But they do. They really are a nice complement. Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go is all about the conversation, really building the quality and the quantity of the conversation so that it's just the oxygen that we're breathing in an organization. And then Promotions Are So Yesterday builds upon that understanding and the trust that we forge through the conversation and gives managers the really actionable ways to engage with others in a way that lets them say yes, because the dimensions beyond climb are completely within a manager and employee's sphere of influence, their control. They can make that happen. And so it's a really empowering way to move development forward.
Excellent. So if we want to learn more about you or about your books, where can I go?
Thank you for asking. Probably juliewinklegiulioni.com is the best place to find me. And I'm also on Twitter at Julie_WG and LinkedIn at my full name as well.
I want to let everybody know that a link to Julie's website will be included in this episode's companion guide. Be sure to unlock that today at projectionsinc.com/podcast. Right now, though, Julie, it is time for our lightning round questions. These are questions I ask of every guest of the podcast. Are you ready?
I am so ready.
All right. Our first question is always a topic showdown. So in this episode, we've been talking about career development, alternatives to the corporate ladder. So in your opinion, Julie, which of these alternatives to a ladder is better, a flight of stairs or an elevator?
Can I say C, none of the above, and a sandbox instead?
Sure. So explain that a little bit. Why would you say a sandbox instead?
I I love the metaphor of being able to grow where you are. You don't have to go anywhere if with the use of these other dimensions, we can invite really powerful development right into the envelope or the sandbox of your current role.
Oh, I love that. All right, next question. What is the best book that you've read recently?
Atlas of the Heart by Brené Brown.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. All right. What is your favorite thing about the work that you do?
There is nothing better than seeing the light go on in someone's eyes, in learning, in teaching. That moment when connections are made, that is just magic.
Very good. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
It's actually a question. Will it matter in a year?
Okay.
And I just love that. It really puts things into perspective, doesn't it?
Absolutely does. That's a good one. All right. Last question. Who or what inspires you?
My kids. My kids do. The clarity that they have about who they are and the fearlessness with which they pursue their goals is a real source of pride and an inspiration.
I love that. Julie, thank you so much for sharing your insight on the way we think about career development today.
Thank you, Jennifer. It's been a pleasure.
I also want to remind our listeners that we listen back to every episode for you and take great notes. You can grab those notes for free at projectionsinc.com/podcast. If you're ready for your Project HR debut, our team is always looking for outstanding guests. Let us know about your expertise at projecthr@iriconsultants.com. Don't forget to subscribe to Project HR. A new episode drops every Thursday. Drop me a line, leave us a review, or give the show a handful of stars wherever you get your podcasts. That's all for this week's episode of Project HR. Let's make it a great day at work.